The Secretary General is on his way to China, where he will over the weekend speak at the Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. He wrapped up his work at the London Somalia Conference yesterday with a press briefing calling the conference an unmitigated success. And we will have the transcript of his remarks available and the transcripts are available online. Also, I have a senior appointment to announce. The Secretary General has made clear his intention to extend Stephen O'Brien of the United Kingdom in his capacity as Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and the head of the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator until the end of August 2017. This extension will enable Mr. O'Brien to conclude a number of initiatives and reforms he has been leading at OCHA. The Secretary General is grateful to Mr. O'Brien for his excellent work, dedication, and commitment to the United Nations and global humanitarian action. At the end of August, Mr. O'Brien will be succeeded by Mark Lowcock of the United Kingdom. Mr. Lowcock brings to the position more than 30 years of experience leading and managing responses to humanitarian crises around the globe and wider strategic leadership in the international development arena. He's currently the permanent secretary at the Department for International Development, a role he assumed in 2011, and we have more in detail on his biography upstairs. And on the margins of the London Conference on Somalia, the Secretary General also discussed the situation in South Sudan with a number of international stakeholders. In this respect, on the 10th and 11th of May, he met with the chairperson of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, otherwise known as IGAD, the Prime Minister Desalegn of Ethiopia, President Museveni of Uganda, and the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat. In the course of these consultations, the Secretary General reiterated the United Nations' deep concern at the prevailing security and humanitarian situation in South Sudan, highlighting the untold suffering being inflicted on the civilian population. The Secretary General underlined the imperative of renewed regional and international efforts to bring to an end the unfolding strategy in that country, in particular through the immediate cessation of hostilities, unfettered humanitarian access to the millions of people in need of assistance, freedom of movement for the UN mission in South Sudan, and the promotion of credible and truly inclusive process involving all the opposition forces in line with the principles enshrined in the August 2015 agreement for the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan. The Secretary General is encouraged by the commitment of all his interlocutors to further enhance their efforts towards ending the violence tearing South Sudan apart, bearing also in mind the need to prevent further negative repercussions on regional security and stability. The UN looks forward to working closely with IGAD and the African Union in the period ahead to identify practical steps that would help arrest the current downward trend towards greater fragmentation of South Sudan, escalating violence and deepening hardship, and sustainably put the country back on track to peace and reconciliation. And also just wanted to update you on the ongoing trip by the Undersecretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix. He's expected to land in Bangui shortly, after which he will participate in a memorial ceremony to honor the 5 peacekeepers killed during the attack in Bangassou earlier this week. The memorial will also be attended by senior officials from the Central African Republic, including the President of the National Assembly, the Prime Minister, and members of the Cabinet. Mr. Lacroix will later head to the UN mission's Level 2 hospital to visit the peacekeepers wounded in the attack. Tomorrow he will leave for Algiers, followed by Niamey, where he will meet with senior government officials to discuss the Malian peace process. And finally, he will be visiting the actual mission in Mali starting Monday. He's expected to convey to all parties the need to implement the peace agreement in full without further delay, and to hold consultations ahead of the renewal of the mission's mandate at the end of June. During the trip, he will hold a town hall meeting with staff and thank them for their continued dedication and hard work in support of the people of Mali. And our colleagues at UNHCR tell us that more than 20,000 refugees have now arrived in Angola, fleeing insecurity and violence in the DRC's Kasai region, and that's only since early April. A steady stream of refugees continue to cross into Dundo in Lunda North Province, and more than 3,000 arrived in the last few days alone. The recent arrivals included people with severe wounds and burn injuries and who have been transferred to local hospitals to receive urgent medical attention. The refugee reception centers in Angola are already overcrowded and struggling to accommodate new arrivals. UNHCR is assisting the Angolan authorities to identify a suitable site for the relocation of refugees. The agency also continues to provide food and relief items to new arrivals. More information on UNHCR's website. And also a new camp in northern Iraq is being it was opened this week. It's called the Hassan Sham U2 camp, and that's to shelter increasing number of Iraqi families fleeing the fighting in western Mosul. The camp is located around 60 kilometers west of Mosul along the highway to Erbil. As of today, the new site shelters about 500 children, women, and men. This is the 12th camp and the latest one to be built by UNHCR and its partners in response to the current emergency. Less than 4 weeks ago, the UNHCR had opened the Hammam al-Ali 2 camp with a capacity for 30,000 people. That camp is almost full. Each displaced family arriving in the new camp receives a tent and other basic items, including blankets, mats, a cooker, jerry cans, and plastic sheeting, and a kitchen set. As of today, more than 1,000 tents already, enough to shelter about 6,000 people. The camp has capacity to accommodate more than 9,000 people when it is fully occupied. And our colleagues at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights today urged the government of El Salvador to take urgent measures to ensure the protection of LGBTI activists and individuals under threat. At least 7 transgender people have been murdered in El Salvador since the beginning of 2017, and according to a recent survey, over half of trans women have received death threats. The High Commissioner's Office has called on the government to conduct prompt and thorough and effective investigations into these hate crimes, and has said it will continue to monitor the situation closely. And in Japan, today the ILO announced that it had a partnership with the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee to advance decent work through social responsible practices during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. The agreement seeks to promote socially responsible labor practices within all deliveries partners of the Games, taking guidance from the ILO, and will include seminars and symposium on corporate responsibility practices. 2:30 on Monday in this very room, there'll be a press conference on the second multi-stakeholder forum on science, technology, and innovation for the SDGs, and that will take place, the forum itself will take place from the 15th to 16th of May right here at headquarters. At the press conference, the speakers it will include Ambassador Machari Kamau, the permanent representative of Kenya to the UN and co-chair of the forum, along with Dr. Von Turekian, Science and Technology Advisor to the U.S. Secretary of State and co-chair of the forum, Mary Snap, a corporate vice president of Microsoft Philanthropy in Microsoft's Corporate, External, and Legal Affairs Department. And we are getting close to the century with Slovakia bringing up the honor roll to 97 since they've paid their dues in full. Ms. Lederer.
Thank you, Stéphane. On South Sudan, you said that the Secretary General told all of these leaders and officials from the AU and IGAD that renewed regional action is imperative, and that he was encouraged by their commitment. What specific actions would the Secretary General like to see the regional actors take?
Well, I think we would like them to work with those parties over which they have an influence to reduce the level of violence, and we would like to see them ensure a re-engagement in the political process. Yes.
Thank you, Stéphane. Next week, there will be an important election in Iran to choose the next president. And I wanted to know, as far as I know, UN doesn't have observers for those elections, but is there any other way the UN know what such important elections entail, especially with the accusation from opposition? Or
no, we have no role in these elections. As you know, over the last few years, as a matter of practice, the UN does not deploy observers itself in elections. We sometimes do coordination of observers or technical assistance. In this case, we have no involvement whatsoever, whether it's through the electoral assistance division here or through UN agencies on the ground. We have not been asked in any way to involve ourselves in these elections, and so we're not involved. We'll be following it through public information as everybody else.
Again, Stéphane, about Iran, the special rapporteur, I know it's very independent from the UN, but there are updates from them, from Human Rights Watch, about the human rights situation in Iran. But we don't hear much from you, from other UN officials, about what is going on inside Iran, especially after the nuclear deal. Can you tell me, is there any particular reason behind that?
No, I think different parts of the UN human rights mechanism have spoken out. If the Secretary General feels the need to speak out, he will. Madame, and then Matthew.
On the occupied Palestinian territories, a Palestinian was killed today by Israeli forces during a demonstration in support of the hunger strike. Mm-hmm. Any comments on that?
No, I'll take a look. I had not seen that report. I will take a look. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, the Council had been set today to vote on UNISFA, and now it's being negotiated. It seems like there's a disagreement with the Secretary General's report on support provided by the mission to the Joint Border Verification and Monitoring Mechanism. So some people are saying that it's a totally it doesn't work. No work is being done, and so the 500 troops are essentially a waste. And I wanted to know, other than just say it should continue to be paid for, can you articulate from this podium or sometime during this, what is the rationale for continuing without changes
I think the mission provides critical work in an area that has been a flashpoint of conflict in the past. Obviously, the mission, as every other peacekeeping mission, operates under the mandate of the Security Council, and we'll obviously wait to see what Security Council members have to say and what the resolution looks like, and we'll implement the resolution as directed by the Security Council.
Right, but the question is not about the mission as a whole. It's specifically about this JBVMM. And is it the Secretary General's position that this thing is actually functional, that there is something to be supported?
The Secretary General's position has been articulated through his reports to the Council and briefings as it's under very close discussion by Council members now. I'm not going to add to what I've already said. Ms. Landry.
Stéphane, do you have anything on this Ebola outbreak in?
No, I just saw the reports from the World Health Organization of possible outbreak in part of the DRC. We'll be literally before I came in here. So we'll be following up with our colleagues. Matthew.
Sure. Different DRC question. There's been a number of lobbying disclosures made in Washington by the Joseph Kabila government. At least $5.6 million of lobbying seeking to convince the U.S. Congress that I guess that continued presidency makes sense. What I wanted to know is what's the relationship between determinations made, let's say, by OCHA and others to issue aid appeals if, in fact, the government is spending money lobbying the government of another country so that a person could stay on past their term. Is there any relation? Do you look at those
the humanitarian aid is focused on helping people, and as long as people need help, we will do our utmost to help them.
Do you have any recommendation to governments that if in fact there are, as people say, the level of displacement in DRC is higher now than at any other stage, that maybe the $5.6 million should be spent on that rather than lobbying?
It's not for me to get into it. As I said, if people need help, we will do whatever we can to help.
And I wanted to ask you about the World Tourism WTO organization. Now that the Georgian candidate has been at least recommended by the executive board, I wanted to ask you again, maybe you saw it. At the time I raised it to you, you said you had seen it. Jeffrey Sachs issued an open letter supporting the South Sudan candidate.
I think I answered the question on it.
Well, did you, other than your statement here from the podium that, as with WIPO, that there's, I guess they're listening here, but was anything actually conveyed to Jeffrey Sachs or to the head of WIPO that these activities were inappropriate, or was this
as far as
extent
Jeffrey
of it?
Sachs is concerned, whatever conversations he and the Secretary General had, I'm not privy to. Olga.
Thanks, Stéphane. Do you have anything to say on the referendum that Kurds are planning to have to organize in Iraq later this year? And as a follow-up of the previous question, some parties requested and asked they want UN to observe this referendum. Will it be possible?
I have no comment on it. As a matter of course, requests for any sort of elections that take place in a country have to come through the national authorities. Evelyn.
Thank you, Stéphane. Why are the refugees going to Angola from the Congo full of burns and serious
Well,
wounds?
obviously, I think it's clear that they have been the victims of violence, most likely by local militias, as we've seen in the past. Yes, Matthew.
I wanted to ask you, and maybe I wasn't listening closely enough, when you said that the Secretary General had met with President of Uganda, Museveni, did the issue of Burundi come up at all, given that he's ultimately the mediator in charge of that process?
The conversations that the Secretary General had in London focused on Somalia and then some on South Sudan. Rosalind.
Do you happen to have an update on the Secretary General's appeal for money to counteract the famine or near famine in Somalia, Yemen, northeast Nigeria, South Sudan?
The last I looked about 2 days ago, and I will get you the hard figures, but my recollection is that the humanitarian appeals for each of those sites were about funded from 19 to 30%. But I'll look on the website as soon as we're done here. Yes, Edie.
Stéphane, these refugees going from Congo into Angola, is this an area where the UN has peacekeepers, or that the...
In Angola? Or?
No, on the...
In the Kasai? Or?
Yeah.
Well, we've had some deployment of troops there, but I'll have to look at the deployment map to see how many troops are actually permanently stationed in that area. Matthew.
Sure. I want just first. I'd asked you about Côte d'Ivoire before, about about Bouaké being subject to rebel, or not rebel, excuse me, mutineering soldiers firing in the air. Now they say Abidjan has been the subject of a rebellion that was supposedly negotiated away and now is back on. What's the mission doing? What does the UN think?
My understanding is, I would say that obviously Côte d'Ivoire has made a lot of progress on the path to stability, national reconciliation, and social cohesion, which is one of the reasons that, as you know, the UN peacekeeping mission is closing at the end of June of this year. The UN the mission encourages the Ivorian people to favor dialogue and general interest to consolidate the gains achieved so far and pursue institutional reforms, in particular in the security sector. The substantive mandate of the mission ended April 30th, and the mission is clearly in liquidation phase and therefore does not any longer have the capacity to monitor. So as you will recall, over the years, we had troops there that were able to be deployed and doing monitor. Given the state of the mission now, as we get to the drawdown, we know most of the peacekeeping troops, if not, have all left, and we no longer have the capacity to monitor. Yes.
Stéphane, the operation to take control of Raqqa has started, and can you ask for specific information of the flow of refugees from those areas? Sure. Because of the intensification of the fights?
Will do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matthew, and then we'll get our guest.
Okay, and thanks for that, the IFAST. I just wanted to nail down this. You'd said for 2 days in a row that the video of the speech in London was going to go on the UN's website. I have seen that UNA UK has finally put it up, but
it's on there. It's on the UNA UK website. The technical reason we're trying to get the hard files, and we're having a little trouble.
It's not a rights issue.
No, it's not a rights issue. We'll get it as soon as we get it.
Okay.
Thank you.